18 months. A year and a half of calendar pages. A year and a half of holidays. A year and a half of birthdays that a man in Maryland never got to see. And in all of that time, there has not been one arrest. Not one name released. Not one charge filed. The only thing that has actually moved in 18 months is the noise. Because right now, on this exact day, the most talked about unsolved killing anywhere in the hip-hop internet is not a rapper. It is not a label executive. It is not some street legend from a documentary. It is a man that most of you only ever knew by a nickname. Ronny Doe. And the last thing the entire internet ever watched him do was beg. Not for money. Not for a feature. Not for fame. He begged for a cheek swab. He stood there, on camera, in front of everybody, and he said, "Take my blood, take my hair, swab my mouth, do whatever you have to do, because I need a court to tell me whether the baby that the whole world is laughing at is my son." That was the ask. That was the entire crime. He wanted a piece of paper with a percentage on it. And in that very same stretch of weeks, in the first days of February 2025, Ronny Doe was shot outside his own home about 25 miles from Baltimore, and police called it a targeted attack. Not random. Not a robbery gone wrong. Targeted. That is the word investigators used. And if you are still here, you already care about this more than the timeline ever did, so hit that like, hit subscribe, because I need this one to travel. Not for me. For the file. This is a case that and Arundel County Police still list as open, still list as active, and still cannot tell us a single detail about, and the only reason anybody is talking about it again this week is because Chrisean Rock said she is leaving the country. Now understand something before we go 1 inch further. Nobody has been charged. Chrisean Rock has not been charged with anything, has not been named as a suspect by any police department, and the loudest version of this story circulating right now, the one out of Baltimore where a man on camera claims she is being investigated for it, has not been confirmed by law enforcement. I am going to say that again at the end, and I am going to say it in the middle, because I am not in the business of handing you a verdict. I am in the business of handing you a timeline. And this timeline is the most disturbing thing I have put in front of you all year. So let's get straight into it, because to understand why this file will not close, you have to understand who Ronny Doe actually was before he became a thumbnail. His name was Cann. The internet called him Ronny Doe. He was from Baltimore. He was not famous. He had no publicist, no reality show, no Zeus network contract, no 7-figure streaming catalog, no team of people whose entire job is to shape how you feel about him. He was a man from Maryland with a phone and a claim, and the claim was simple. He said that the little boy the world calls Chrisean Jr. was his child. Not Blueface's child. His. And see, this is where I need you to slow down and actually process what was happening in real time, because the internet turned this into a punchline so fast that almost nobody sat with the actual human shape of it. You had a national audience of millions of people that had spent 2 years treating Chrisean Rock and Blueface like a scripted television show. Every fight, every arrest, every live stream, every tattoo, every court date. It was content. It was a season. And when that baby was born in 2023, the audience did what the audience always does now. It made him a bit. It made a newborn into a running joke, and the joke ran for years. And underneath that joke, there was a man in Baltimore raising his hand. Because here is the part that got completely flattened by the memes. Ronny Doe did not show up quietly. He did not slide into anybody's inbox and disappear. He went public, and he stayed public, and he said the same 11 words over and over for months. I want a DNA test. Is that my son? And look, I want to be fair to how strange this whole thing looked from the outside, because it looked chaotic. It looked like 3 adults arguing about a baby in front of a live studio audience of millions, and that is exactly what it was. But when you strip the noise off it and you line up what each person actually said and when they actually said it, one of those 3 people never changed their story a single time. Not once. Ronny Doe said the same thing in October that he said in December, that he said in January, that he said the last week he was alive. Blueface changed his story. Chrisean Rock changed her posture. Ronny Doe never moved. Now let's back all the way up, because the paternity mess started before Ronny was ever a household name in this. When Chrisean Rock was pregnant, Blueface publicly cast doubt on whether the child was his. That was 2023. He talked about a test. He talked about not being sure. Then Chrisean Rock posted a paternity test that she said proved Blueface was the father, and for the audience, that was supposed to be the end of it. Case closed, put your phones down, congratulations. Except it was not the end of it, because there was another man in Baltimore watching all of that and saying, hold on, that timeline does not work, and I have a right to know. And this is where the receiptless crowd, the people who will argue with you for 6 hours about something they read in a caption, decided to pick a side based on whichever version was funnier. That is the part that I cannot get past even now. Not whichever version had documents. Whichever version had better jokes. Ronny Doe went on camera. He said, I deserve to have this proven through me. He said, any man on here, any real man, any stand-up man who might have the privilege of being a father would want to know. He said, draw my blood. Swab my mouth. Take my hair. And then he said something that, honestly, is going to sit on my chest for a long time. He said his last name was Cann, and it was possible that after him, his family name goes no further. He said he might be the last one carrying it. Read that again, and then remember what happened weeks later. That is not a man chasing clout. Clout does not sound like that. Clout does not talk about lineage. Clout does not beg a laboratory. A man chasing clout wants a viral moment, and then he wants the next thing. Ronny Doe wanted a percentage on a document, and he was willing to be laughed at by an entire country to get it. And they laughed. Let me not sanitize this. The joke economy ate him alive. They called him delusional. They called him a groupie. They said he was chasing a woman for relevance. They built entire pages off of clipping him and captioning it wrong. And in the middle of that pile-on, he kept saying, why does everybody want me quiet? He literally said it. He said, why do y'all keep trying to keep me quiet? Why do y'all not want me to speak? What is it that y'all are hiding? Be for real and just let me know. Then he was gone. So now let's talk about the mall, because the mall is the beat where this stopped being an internet argument and started being something with a temperature. In that same window in February 2025, Ronny Doe ran into Chrisean Rock in public. At a mall. She had her infant son with her. And he pulled his camera out and he filmed it, and he was not calm, and I am not going to pretend he was calm. He was saying that is my son, over and over, and she was telling him he was weird and nobody was stalking him, and police were reportedly called to that scene. And look, I want to sit in the discomfort of that clip honestly, because the honest version helps this story and the dishonest version does not. Was that the right way to handle it? No. Filming a woman in a mall while she is holding a baby is not the move, and I would not defend it as the move. If you have a paternity claim, the mechanism is a courthouse, not a food court. That is real, and I am not going to pretend otherwise just because the man is dead now. But here is what that clip also is, and this is what nobody wants to hold at the same time. That clip is a man who had run out of doors. He had tried the internet. He had tried talking. He had said, take me to court, let's do this legally, and nothing was moving. And in the video, when he says that is my son, it does not sound like a man performing for a camera. It sounds like a man who is out of options standing in the middle of a shopping center in Maryland, saying the only sentence he has left. Now here is where this stops being messy and starts being serious, and I need everybody locked in for this part, because this is the beat that changes the entire shape of the story. The first week of February 2025. Maryland. Roughly 25 miles outside of Baltimore. Ronny Doe is shot in front of his own home. According to police, he was found on the ground outside the residence. Officers rendered aid at the scene. Firefighters transported him to the University of Maryland Baltimore Washington Medical Center. And it was there at that hospital that he died from his wounds. Police classified it as a homicide. Police classified it as targeted. Sit with that second word. Targeted. In police language, that word is not decoration. Random means a stranger, a stray, an accident of geography. Targeted means somebody knew where he lived, somebody knew when he would be there, and somebody went there specifically for him. That is the official framing from investigators, not from a timeline, not from a comment section, not from me. And within hours, one question detonated across every platform simultaneously, and it has never stopped since. Why him? Why that week? Why the one man in this entire circus who had no fame to gain, no album to promote, no show to sell, and nothing on the table except a request for a laboratory test? Now, I need to be extremely precise here, because precision is the only thing that keeps a story like this honest. Police have never publicly named a suspect in the killing of Ronny Doe. Nobody has been arrested. Nobody has been charged. There is no public evidence that has been released tying any specific person to it. What exists is a homicide file, an official designation of targeted, and a silence that has now lasted a year and a half. TMZ reported on this again recently, and the reporting is almost unbearably plain. The killing of Chrisean Rock's ex-boyfriend remains unsolved. Police told them the investigation is still active as detectives continue working to identify the person responsible. A representative for the Arundel County Police Department in Maryland told them, and I want you to hear the exact temperature of this, that it is an active investigation. However, they are unable to provide any details. Active investigation. Unable to provide any details. That is the whole update. That is 18 months of institutional progress compressed into 11 words. And I want to be clear about something, because it would be lazy to turn police into the villain here. An open homicide file with no released details is not automatically a scandal. That is frequently what a real investigation looks like from the outside. Detectives do not brief the internet. They do not owe a comment section a status report. Cases with witness problems, cases in tight communities, cases where people are afraid, they sit like this for years and then close in a single afternoon when one person finally talks. But here is the thing nobody wants to say out loud. Here is the thing that got buried under 2 years of memes. In 18 months, this case has generated more jokes than tips. It has generated more edits than leads. There is an entire content industry that has made real money off of this family's worst week, and if you added up every view on every video about Ronny Doe, you would have an audience larger than most American cities, and out of all of that attention, not one piece of it has produced an answer. That is the 18-month silence. And I am going to keep calling it that because it needs a name. Now let's talk about what actually dragged this back onto the front page this week, because it was not a police press conference. It never is anymore. It was a video out of Baltimore. A man on camera making an extremely heavy claim, saying that Chrisean Rock is being investigated in connection with the death of her child's father. That clip moved fast. It moved through Instagram, it moved through the reaction channels, it moved through the commentary pipeline, and within about a day it had been rewritten in the retelling from a claim into a fact. So let me put the brakes on that with both feet. That claim, as of right now, has not been publicly confirmed by any law enforcement agency. Not by Arundel County. Not by Baltimore. Not by any prosecutor. A man on a phone camera saying something is not an indictment. It is not a warrant. It is not a charging document. It is a man on a phone camera. And I need you to understand why I am being this stubborn about it, because it is not squeamishness. It is because the sloppy version of this story is the version that protects whoever actually did it. When the internet convicts somebody in 48 hours off of a clip, it poisons the well for the real thing. It gives every future defense attorney a mob to point at. It lets people dismiss the entire question as internet noise. If you actually want an answer for Ronny Doe, the last thing this case needs is another confident guess. But that is exactly why the next part matters so much, because you cannot look at what happened next and pretend the timing is not loud. Because right as that Baltimore clip was spreading, right as headlines were being written again, right as the phrase unsolved homicide was trending back into people's feeds, Chrisean Rock went on camera and told her audience she is moving out of the United States. And it was not framed as a vacation. It was not framed as a tour. She said she wants to move out of the country. She said she is done with the noise here. And when people pressed her for specifics, the answer was essentially that details were not going to be given. We are moving out the country, we are not telling you the details. Now, I want to be an adult about this, because there is a completely innocent reading of that, and it deserves airtime. Chrisean Rock has lived the last 4 years of her life inside an aquarium. Every fight, every relationship, every hospital visit, every low point, every single mistake she has ever made has been clipped, captioned, remixed, and monetized by strangers. She has said the American internet is exhausting. If somebody offered me that exact life and then offered me an exit to a country where nobody knows my name, I would be on the runway before they finish the sentence. Wanting out of that is not evidence of anything. It is arguably the sanest sentence she has said in 2 years. But here is the problem, and it is a problem she did not create but absolutely walked into. Nothing exists in isolation anymore. When the same 7-day window contains an unsolved homicide of your child's alleged father coming back into national headlines, a viral accusation aimed directly at you, and your own announcement that you are leaving the country and will not say where, the audience is not going to file those as 3 separate stories. They are going to staple them together, and honestly, no amount of PR is going to unstaple them. And Chrisean Rock knows that. She has been on the internet long enough to know exactly how that reads. So the comment sections did what comment sections do. Everybody became a detective. Everybody became a prosecutor. You had people saying she is trying to flee. You had people saying she is being investigated federally, which again, no agency has confirmed anything of the kind. You had people who genuinely believe she has no idea any of this is happening, and you had people who think this is the most calculated exit in the history of reality television. And in the middle of all that, she said something that I keep chewing on. She was asked how much she thirsts outside of this country, and she said, so much more. So much more. Whatever you believe about her, that is a woman describing a version of herself that only exists somewhere else. Now let's get to Blueface, because Blueface put his own hands all over this timeline, and it is the single most reckless sequence of moves anybody in this story has made. Go back to 2023. Blueface publicly questioned whether the baby was his. Chrisean Rock then posted a paternity test she said settled it in his favor, and for roughly 2 years, Blueface functioned as the father in public. He talked about him. He appeared with the story attached to him. The entire internet, every meme page, every reaction channel, treated that child as Blueface's son. Then on March 6, 2026, Blueface went on X and blew the whole thing up. He wrote that Junior is not his biological son. He wrote, and I want to be careful to keep this accurate, rest in peace to his father Ronny. He said he could no longer continue the plot because it did not feel right, as a present father in all of his kids' lives, to be discredited as an absent father to a child that is not biologically his. He said he tried his best to fill in the blanks because the child's biological father is no longer with us, but he could not continue the plot. Continue the plot. I need everybody to hear those 3 words as clearly as possible, because that is a man describing the fatherhood of a real living child as a storyline. Not a mistake. Not a misunderstanding. A plot. A bit. A narrative arc he was participating in, and then chose to exit publicly on a Friday in a post. And whether Blueface is telling the truth in that post or not, and I genuinely do not know which version of Blueface is the honest one because he has occupied both positions. That sentence tells you everything about the machinery this entire situation was living inside. These are not private people making private decisions badly. This is a set. And that little boy has been a cast member since before he could hold his own head up. Chrisean Rock responded, and I will give her this. She responded more calmly than the internet expected. She put out a statement saying she was not interested in going back and forth online. Then she posted screenshots of direct messages between her and Blueface, and in one of them she accused him of repeatedly disrespecting their son for clout. She said her responsibility is protecting her child and keeping him away from the circus. She said he lied before he denied him, and that it was nothing new. And whatever you think of Chrisean Rock, that particular sentence is not wrong. He did question it first. That is documented. That happened before Ronny Doe was ever a topic. So now count the number of positions Blueface has held on the paternity of one child. He doubted it. He accepted it. He performed it for 2 years. He renounced it in a post and assigned the fatherhood to a dead man. And then, just this month, in July 2026, Blueface and Chrisean Rock were spotted together in Miami, and reports started flying that he was claiming Jr. again, and then unclaiming him again within roughly a day. Carlisa reacted to it. The reaction channels reacted to her reacting to it. And that is where we are. Claimed. Unclaimed. Reclaimed. Unclaimed. Now roll it back one more time, because Blueface also spoke on Ronny Doe directly in an interview, and this is the part where the temperature in the room really drops. He was asked why he would stay with somebody he believed had tried to set him up. And Blueface said he did not know her then the way he knows her now, that he gave it the benefit of the doubt, and that knowing what he knows now, he is certain. He used a specific phrase. He called her a setup artist. He said maybe it is a Baltimore thing, he does not know, but that he has seen her on multiple occasions give people addresses, put his address out publicly, tell somebody that a particular person is at a particular place. That is an extremely serious accusation. It is also an accusation, not a finding, and it is coming from a man who has changed his story about this exact family 4 separate times, and who is in a documented, volatile, mutually destructive relationship with the woman he is describing. So weigh it accordingly. I am not going to hand you Blueface as a reliable narrator, and I am not going to pretend he is worthless either. He is a man, a viral accusation out of Baltimore that no agency has confirmed. The mother of the child announcing she is leaving the country and will not say where. And the most famous man in the story publicly reassigning the child's fatherhood to the dead man and calling his own participation a plot. You do not need to invent anything to find that disturbing. You just need to be able to read a calendar. And this is the part where I have to stop and talk about the person in this entire story who never got a vote, because if this video is about anybody, it is about him. Chrisean Jr. He is a toddler. He did not choose any of this. He did not choose 2 famous parents, he did not choose a paternity war, he did not choose a homicide file, and he absolutely did not choose to be the most memed infant in the history of the internet. And that is what he was. Let's be honest about what this platform and every platform did to a newborn. From the day he was born, he was a punchline. Not his parents. Him. The baby. There were entire accounts built on him. There were edits. There were captions. There were people running jokes about a child's face for months, and then there were people speculating about that child's development like they were qualified to do it, which they were not, and I am not going to participate in that here. I want to be extremely direct about that last part, because it is where the joke economy went from cruel to genuinely indefensible. Strangers on the internet, with no medical training, no access, no relationship to that family, decided to publicly diagnose a toddler off of clipped video. That is not commentary. That is not tea. There is no version of that which is acceptable, and the fact that it generated millions of views is the strongest evidence I can give you that the attention machine has no floor. And then there were the incidents. There were reports and viral clips through this whole run that made people genuinely afraid for that baby. There was the story out of a streamer event last year where it was claimed that the child was left in a car during a heat wave and that people at the venue had to intervene. Those claims circulated widely, and I want to flag them as claims because I have not seen a legal finding attached to them. But every single time something like that surfaced, the response online was not concern. It was jokes. It was another meme cycle. The child's safety became content, and then the content became money, and then the money made more content. So let me say the part that this entire industry, including everybody with a channel, needs to hear. The internet is forever. That little boy is going to be 15. He is going to be 16. He is going to be 17 years old with a phone in his hand and a search bar in front of him, and he is going to type in his own name. And what he is going to find is not going to be a baby book. He is going to find years of strangers laughing at his face. He is going to find a man he never met, standing in a mall in Maryland, screaming that he is his son. He is going to find that same man's homicide file still open. He is going to find one of his parents saying on the internet that he is not his and rest in peace to his real father. He is going to find the other one saying she has to keep him away from the circus. And he is going to find our comment sections. Every joke that got typed about him is going to be there waiting for him. Every one of them. Fully searchable. Timestamp. And whatever anybody thinks about how he went about it, whatever anybody thinks about the mall video, whatever anybody thinks about the way he chose to fight, he asked for the one thing that a modern laboratory can answer in about 72 hours for a couple $100, and 18 months later, he is in the ground. The case is open, nobody is charged, and his son, if that is his son, is still in the middle of a paternity argument being conducted by press release. And now this is where I have to say the hardest part of the whole video, and I want to be very careful with it because it is the part that gets people to type before they think. The theory that has taken over the internet is that Ronny Doe was killed because he wanted a DNA test. That is the narrative. That is what people are saying in every comment section on every platform right now. And I understand the logic of it. I understand why the timing makes people feel that way. But a theory is not evidence, and a feeling is not a finding, and the second we start treating a coincidence of dates as a conviction, we are doing exactly what the joke economy did to that baby, just with higher stakes. Chrisean Rock has not been charged. She has not been named as a suspect by police. That is the factual position as of today, and if that changes, it will change through a courthouse and not through a comment section. But at the same time, and hear me all the way out, an open homicide of a man who publicly asked for a paternity test, in which police say the attack was targeted, and in which no arrest has been made in a year and a half, is not a story anybody should be allowed to move on from. Both of those things are true at once. Refusing to convict somebody and refusing to forget somebody are not opposites. That is the whole spine of this video. And I am not a detective. I want to be honest about my own lane here. I read police statements, I read the reporting, I watch what people say on the record, I put it in order, and I tell you what the order looks like. What the order looks like is a man who spent the last months of his life asking one question, and a country that answered him with memes, and a case file that has been sitting in Arundel County for 18 months, while everybody involved kept trending. There is one more thing about Ronny Doe that I cannot shake, and I am going to leave it here because I think it is the most important 30 seconds of tape in this entire saga. He said, "All I want to know is if Junior is my son." He said, "I have a family." He said his last name might end with him. And in one of the clips he said something almost casual, almost throwaway, about how for everybody watching, this was a storyline. He said something like, "For y'all this is a story you wake up to, and for me this is what I wake up to every morning and what I go to sleep to every night." He was telling us, out loud, in advance, that we were consuming his life as entertainment. And we did it anyway. And then he died, and we made that entertainment too. I have watched a lot of clips in this line of work. That one is different. Watching a man complain about being turned into content, and then becoming the biggest piece of content of his entire life by dying, is the most brutal indictment of this whole ecosystem that I have ever seen. And every single one of us is standing inside it right now, including me, including this video, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. And before anybody accuses me of picking a team here, let me give every side of this its fair weight, because a story like this one only survives if it is built honestly. Chrisean Rock is a 20-something woman who got famous through the worst possible door, who has been filmed at her lowest points for profit by people who never wished her well, and who has never been charged with a single thing connected to this homicide. That is the truth, and it stays the truth no matter how loud a time. And you do not have to defend Blueface to notice, he handed the internet the single most damaging sentence in this entire saga when he described being a father as a plot he could no longer continue. Hold all three of those at once, and you are finally looking at the real story instead of the version that fits in a thumbnail. So where does this actually go from here, and what should you be watching for? Because I do not want to leave you with a mood. I want to leave you with markers. Marker 1. Watch Arundel County. Not the timeline, not the reaction channels, the department. If that agency ever moves from active investigation with no details available to naming anybody, everything about this story changes in a single afternoon. And every video anybody made about it up to that point becomes either vindicated or worthless. Marker 2. Every once in a while in cases like this, it is the family that breaks it open, not the police and definitely not the internet. If they ever go on the record properly, that is the moment this stops being a rumor cycle and becomes a case again. And marker 5. The one that should scare everybody, and the reason I made this video the way I made it. Chrisean Jr. is going to grow up. That is not speculation. That is arithmetic. And when he does, he is going to be the final judge of every single one of us. Not Blueface. Not Chrisean Rock. Not the police. Him. He is going to read the whole archive, and he is going to decide who in this story treated him like a person and who treated him like a... Did you laugh at that, baby? Because I need